Welcome to Bishop Chronicles. As always, I'm your host, Adisa Banjoko, chilling with the Zato Ichi shirt. Ooh, that's hard. Anyway, um, yeah, I didn't do a podcast last week. Why? Because my cousin passed away on Monday. Her name was Alexa. She was amazing. She was the closest thing I had to a sister in my youth, and she was young. She was 53, and so when I talk about Stoic practices, right? Um, I like Stoicism because of the practice. I like Stoicism because um, the exercises are easy to understand, and you need to make a habit of doing them, like therapy. Like, I'm always encouraging people to go to therapy, right? Like, I run the Resilient Men's Group. I encourage you to join. DM me on Bishop Chronicles if you want, right? And we can have a conversation and get you on deck. I have to do it actually shortly, but the idea here is that we understand that these practices make it so that when things get rough, we have some tools in play already, right? And so, nevertheless, um, my cousin's passing was very hard for me, and so I used prayer, meditation, fasting, Stoic journaling, right? Everything at my disposal to to stay okay. So when I learned the day that she died, I had went to the hospital. I saw her in the morning. Did what probably most people would do: say some words of love, said a quiet prayer, and then that was like, I'd say 9 in the morning, and I believe she died later in the afternoon. So I was at work when one of my cousins called me and said, "Hey, I just learned Alessa passed away," right? And I called one of my other cousins to just speak with him briefly. My cousin Mike, my cousin Steve initially called, and so, um, I still had to teach jujitsu, you know, and I had to ask myself, would she want me to break down on these mats? Would she want me to not be able to teach these people how to move and breathe and be dynamic and find their own courage, find their own wisdom, strength, and beauty on these mats? Or would she want me to break down and leave? And I knew she wouldn't. So I taught my classes as if nothing had happened, but it wasn't pretending. Like, sometimes I think when people die or we're going through hard situations, we pretend. And I didn't pretend. I just found joy in the present moment. Now, it was hard when Friday hit and I had to fill another dot in on the Stoic calendar, where every week you fill in a dot. I felt like, I don't know, something akin to survivor's guilt, survivor's remorse. I always feel this, like when my boy Shahid Akbar, rest in peace to the Jack, and when he passed away, when he was murdered, I felt a lot of survivor's guilt, particularly because he was a little younger than me, probably a lot younger, honestly, and that was hard for me. That was hard for me because I had just spoken to a friend about trying to do some stuff for the kids in Oakland, and maybe we get Jack involved. And I was talking with my boy Vince Bayon, and I was like, yeah, let me call the Jacka. And then when I got home from work, I was teaching at a school in San Jose. My ex-wife told me that he was murdered. When I got home, it was on the news. Right, so I deal with a lot of survivor's guilt, kind of a thing in general. And so one of the things, right, when you look at the Stoics, they have this idea of memento mori, right? This is a memento mori calendar, right? Remember death. And so you remember death to increase your gratitude, like you have this moment, and to also increase your discipline, like you don't have all day. If you're writing a book, you're trying to run a marathon, you're trying to get to college, you're trying to reconnect with a family member, you're trying to reconnect with a friend, you want to start a business, you have to do it because you don't have forever. The clock is always ticking. The clock is always ticking. And so I wanted to revisit a book that helped me a few years ago when one of my best friends, his son passed away very young, and I wasn't around because I was in the UK at the time. And so I got this book by Cicero called How to Grieve. I think you can get it on Audible for almost nothing, right? Get that book. Get that book. Now, Cicero, I don't believe he was a Stoic, right? But he wrote this book 45 BCE, following the death of his daughter Tullia, and amid the collapse of the Roman Empire. So there were political deaths, and there were practical, personal deaths, right? And so he wrote this book as a way to console himself and help others learn how to console themselves. Forgive the airplane. So I just kind of want to look at the book really quick and encourage you to get it. So again, right, it's this idea of understanding the nature of grief and distress, and looking at the Stoic lens of, mastering our emotions. This doesn't mean that we don't feel anything. I've told you 100 times. It's not about not feeling. It is about owning all of what you feel and doing the best thing despite how you feel. That's really what it means to be a Stoic. You will feel pain, fear, sadness, anger, joy, and all of these things can become imbalanced. But you want to keep them, you feel them as you feel them, but you want to move and act in the most beautiful, kind, and compassionate way, and the most courageous way, right? In the wisest way, right? So what Cicero says there is that, grief doesn't help the deceased, right? You cry because you need to cry. And so I definitely shared some tears by myself for sure. But that time heals naturally, and wisdom can heal immediately. I agree with that. They say time heals all wounds. I don't believe it heals all wounds, but very close, very close. And if you add wisdom on it, if you seek answers, time heals quicker, right? And that he has this whole thing about enduring loss with composure, and he tells really scary stories. A man whose son was killed by a leader and served to him for dinner. Yeah. And he knew it was like a trick that this cruel king and ruler had played on him, and how he dealt with it. He talked about other men whose sons were killed callously by cruel leaders and the way that they dealt with it in the moment. He talked about, I think, some of the Spartan women and how they responded when their sons were killed in battle. And it's really deep. It's deeper than I can ever expect to manage. Then he talked about the practical remedies, right? Pre-rehearsal of possible misfortunes. This is a big deal, right? Like, I forget who it was that was noted back in the day, but it was a Greek leader or philosopher, and they said, "Oh, your child has died," and they said, "Well, I always knew that they were mortal." That is a tough thing to accept as a parent. The mortality of your children. You can accept your own mortality, but the mortality of your children is really hard. And I have never seen a parent who lost their child that it was easy for. It is hard. It is hard, right? But it is important to know that they are mortal, so that we don't delude ourselves on their sacredness, our sacredness, and the sacred nature of this moment. Because you never know when, car accidents, things happen. A friend of my family, recently, their son passed away suddenly because of an illness that they didn't know the child had. I mean, you can see, I'm not okay with it. It hurts, right? But we have to be authentic and philosophical about the wisdom and the nature of life and death. When I went to go see my cousin, I told myself, everything you're about to see in this hospital is natural. If you see family members grieving, it is natural. The life and death process is natural. And the only difference between my cousin dying that day and me being here are things that I'm not in control of. I'm not in control of the laws of the universe. I'm not in control of the divine forces that determine one's lifespan. And so, where she was, I'll likely be. And someone will be coming to visit me and praying for me, and someone will come visit them and pray for them, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't make it easy to manage. I meditated at night. I prayed at night. I wrote in my journal, right? Under the Stoic line and under a lot of what Cicero wrote, he said that, grief arises from our judgment that something bad has happened instead of acknowledging that it's natural, right? And that death is not evil for the deceased, right? This is one thing. When I was visiting my cousin, I told myself that this wasn't a punishment for her. Just like when I die, it won't be a punishment for me. It is a natural part of the process. And that preparation for loss in advance diminishes its impact. If you know anyone you know can die, even yourself, you're more likely to be at peace with what you experience, right? Now, cross-culturally, right, you can look at Sufism, right? They have what they call zikr al-maut. Zikr al-maut. My Arabic is horrible despite being Muslim, right? And it's a Sufi thread, which is the remembrance of death. There is a writer named Al-Ghazali, and he wrote a book called On the Remembrance of Death, and it's very powerful. I encourage you to get it. Anyone who's into Stoicism, I encourage them to get that book because it is a powerful reflection, right? And Zikr al-Maut is focused on a regular contemplation of death to help you detach from worldly attachments, to focus on spiritual development, to create proper perspective on life's priorities, and to cultivate gratitude for the present moment. Very Stoic akin, right? Like Cicero, this practice aims to prepare the mind for inevitable loss, though with more emphasis on God consciousness, right? Also known as Taqwa. Right, and then there's the Hagakure. If you've ever seen Ghost Dog, right, that's the book that that the dude's reading. You should watch Ghost Dog if you haven't. It's about an assassin in the hood. It's a classic film. RZA did some of the music, and he's actually in one of the scenes towards the end. But Yamamoto Tsunetomo, who wrote the Hagakure, right, which means hidden beneath the leaves, right? It's the things that you can't really see on the surface, right? He talks about it begins with the way of the samurai is found in death, right? And if you talk to a lot of competitors in jiu-jitsu and other sports, they'll always say, like, hey, so how did you get your head right? They'll say, I just pretended as though I was already dead. So this is a state we can find. But for Yamamoto Tsunetomo, daily meditation on one's mortality, right? Very similar to Zikr al-Maut, right? Preparation for death liberates one to live virtuously, right? That you want to live well when you know life is short. Detachment from outcomes while maintaining your duty. Like you don't, I'm going to do this. If you don't, you keep your virtue, you keep focus, you keep going, right? And tranquility through acceptance rather than resistance of the facts, right? So the intersecting concepts between the Stoic, the Sufi, and the samurai, right, is preparatory contemplation. All three advocate regular meditation on your death. They talk about tranquility through acceptance, right? Each tradition seeks peace coming from embracing rather than denying death, right? Don't pretend that's not real for you or anybody else, right? Freedom through detachment, recognizing the impermanence, liberates one from excessive attachment, and emphasis on virtue. All three maintain that right conduct matters more than outcomes. This is a hard thing because, we all want to win, right? But doing what you know is right is better, especially in these times. And to stay present, right? Death contemplation paradoxically enhances appreciation for life. So I want you to have a blessed day. I want you to have a blessed day. And if you're grieving, my heart is with you. So get your yoga on, get your prayer on, get your meditation on, get your tea drinking on, burn some incense, do whatever you got to do to stay centered. But love this day and this moment. I appreciate you for visiting me here at Bishop Chronicles. I apologize for the time I took off. I feel like a more stoic version of myself would have showed up better, would have showed up stronger. Um, and so I apologize for not being able to follow through, but I couldn't even talk about it really. So I'll see you next week. We'll do more stuff. It'll be more upbeat. And also, look at that right there. A quick shout out to Reverend and Sensei Kawahatsu at the Konko Church in San Francisco. He did that calligraphy for me. Please follow him on Instagram. I think it's just Konko SF Church or underscore between them. And that says the Cloud Scroll. The Cloud Scroll is a series of moves that I'll be teaching in a few weeks in the United Kingdom at IMA Leeds, right? So look forward to that. I'll also be showing some iron hook scroll movements. I'm going to get him to make a second iron hook scroll. That is the Cloud Scroll, also known in Japanese is Unkai no Kakimono. Oops, I'm sorry. Unkai no Makimono. There's Kakimono and there's Makimono. In any case, I'm very grateful to him and very grateful for that art and his perfection of calligraphy. And I look forward to sharing more with you in the UK on the 4th. I will be at Apperley Bridge, Gracie Baja, right? Looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you to Professor Lewis and Professor Khalil for having me out. Looking forward to being at IMA, Immortal Martial Arts Leeds, on the 5th, teaching no-gi stuff. It'll be a mix of Cloud Scroll, Iron Hook Scroll, and some other stuff that I haven't shown before, so I'm very excited. I've never taught anything from the Cloud Scroll. And finally, I will be at EKBJJ in Barnsley. That is a rough school, and I'm looking forward to seeing my friends there. All right, Professor Grant, very grateful. And the homies back at IMA Leeds, right? Liam, Josh, and Steve, everybody. I'm very grateful for all of you, Mateus. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. Stay blessed, and have a really good week. Peace.